Glenn, how are you doing down there in D.C. these days?
Well, Marty, there's a lot going on down here, and as we were saying off mic, we are doing the Lord's work in the Devil's City, and so a lot of turmoil here today. And as we're speaking here in the U.S., for the first time since the position was created back in the late 1800s, the House Majority Leader was defeated in an election last night, and this sends shockwaves throughout the political establishment in both parties here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I think it was, they seem not to be getting what's going on with the grassroots uprising that's taking place globally against corruption and status quo, and very, very interesting. It's happening down everywhere. South America, the president had to come out with the World Cup and promising investigations into corruption. China, they got just simply fired 900 people in government. It's just very, very interesting. And actually, I had a conversation last night at dinner with someone from Russia. The same, very, very interesting take.
Well, I think no question about it, but it's the connecting of the dots that people here, and maybe all around the world, aren't seeing. Obviously you are, others that are listening to this are, but people don't see the forest for their particular tree. So the people who are beneficiaries of the status quo here in Washington, we're all sort of living in a bubble. The incomes have stayed very high here. 6 of the 10 wealthiest counties in America are in and around Washington, D.C., and it's not because people here are so productive or so smart or inventing life-saving medicines and inventions and things like that. No, just money has been sucked in from around the country here. So people's incomes never really went down here as a result of the so-called Great Recession. Housing prices never tanked here. People are beneficiaries of high 401k balances, and some of these people, it takes literally an act of Congress to fire them. So people here are fat, dumb, and happy, and they think they have empathy for the rest of the country and the rest of the world, but frankly they don't. They don't, because their restaurants are bustling, their bank accounts are full. So as such, they don't understand the forces that are really at work out there, or not just around the country, but around the whole world.
Would you say that when the Republicans, do you think they were entitled to actually take the majority in back in the House?
Frankly, by all rights, no. But obviously, but when in 2006, when the Republicans lost the House, they lost the Senate, and then set up the stage for Mr. Obama to take the place of Mr. Bush. America and Americans were just kind of done with the Republican Party. But amazingly, 4 years later, Republicans came back into the majority here in the House of Representatives because people found themselves, as the world really wasn't getting better, the economy wasn't really getting better, and people found themselves more afraid of Nancy Pelosi and Barney Frank and Barack Obama than they disliked Republicans. So as a consequence, they shifted their allegiance, these swing voters, from Democrats back over to Republicans. But the Republicans here in Washington that were propelled into positions of power as a result of that, whether it was members of Congress who became committee chairmen, or members of Congress who became part of congressional leadership, or frankly any of the legions of staffers around here that were propelled, that really run things on a day-to-day basis. Legions of staffers that were propelled into staff directorships of committees and things like that, frankly did not understand the forces that had propelled them into those positions. They were the beneficiaries of forces they didn't understand. And then to the extent that they did understand this whole grassroots uprising, it's got a lot of different names, Liberty Movement, Taxpayer Movement, Tea Party movement in this country, but it's something that's kind of bubbling from the grassroots up. To the extent that they did understand it, they do not like it. The people that So here, as a consequence, say last night, some of the immediate comments that I saw and heard from people, including some who are frankly friends of mine, was shock and anger at the voters. There was not much self-reflection. There was no introspection going, what is it we are doing wrong that have caused people to want to send this sort of a message? Instead, it was to blame the voters, the quote-unquote stupid voters, for throwing out the House Majority Leader.
It's just amazing, but they just will never seem to actually say, well, maybe we are doing something wrong. It's somebody else is always to blame. But it is very curious because, I mean, our computer's been projecting, I mean, God, for the last 20 years that this would be developing, and we're going to, see a rise in the third party going into 2016. And what I find really fascinating is that how everything just keeps playing into that. I mean, Bonner basically funding, people to take out anybody that supported the Tea Party. I mean, when I try to explain people, I said, you don't understand. There's a civil war in the Republican Party, and if you put Bonner in charge of everything and said for a dictator for 30 days, would he actually change anything? The answer is no.
Well, most of the people here that I work around, and again, many of them are friends, and they might mean well, but I just think that they're wrong. They do the same thing. In other words, if you just gave them the stroke of a pen, you wouldn't see giant federal agencies closing down or programs being shuttered. There might be some tweaks sort of at the margins, and quite frankly, there are many federal programs, including a lot of corporate so-called crony capitalism kind of subsidies and programs that benefit trade preferences and things like that benefit certain corporate interests. There are many of those that a lot of my friends who genuinely believe themselves to be at least fiscal conservatives or believe themselves to be defenders of the free market would support increasing those programs, even though those programs are antithetical to the values and principles that they feel like they hold.
Yeah, I mean, it's just very fascinating. It's how this is unfolding, and that's what I keep saying. This is not my opinion. This is basically the trends that are coming out, and so I'm kind of like observing it myself, and it's just really is fascinating how to actually sit and watch it live.
Well, I know in this instance, I think on the case of Mr. Kander losing, it was almost like a perfect storm of things going wrong all at the same time politically. But what I find fascinating is that if this was the only place and then the only race in the world where this sort of thing was happening, I think you could kind of re-examine the elements of that perfect storm at the micro level, and you'd really be learning something. But in fact, I suspect if you take a look at the work that you do, and you're writing about pretty regularly and sharing with people pretty regularly, you see that this is part of this is more symptomatic of a larger problem than the problem itself. So you say if this is the only place in the world this sort of thing was happening, you'd say, well, they've got a problem with that one particular political party in that one particular country, the United States. But instead, as you have thoughtfully written about, this is happening in places like the Ukraine and Thailand and South America and various countries in South America, and you're seeing places like Great Britain starting to seemingly come apart at the seams. The constituent parts come apart at the seams. So this seems to be part and parcel of a larger trend, a larger pattern, and that larger trends and larger patterns are what you are about.
Well, I think what this is it's post World War II Bretton Woods type thing, and what is going on is that for some bizarre reason, a lot of people blame Keynes, but in all honesty, Keynes never advocated what's going on. He said, fine, you can go to deficit spending, in a depression. but not perpetually. So I don't know any reason that you would have stood up and said such a thing. And of course, I mean, now you have, Krugman or whatever, other people that just advocate spending all the time. But that's not a sound policy. And Keynes himself never said that would actually, be practical. But this has just led to, it's more than just fiscal problems. It has led largely to the fact that we have really, I think, a collapsing situation, and this is where the people that have, talk about hyperinflation have really distracted people from how things really collapse. It is when an established government is there and they have a debt market, etc., then it's to sustain that. So therefore, they start raising taxes, and the disposable income keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and that is what produces the revolution. And so we're beginning to see that. It's the same trends that led into 1700s, and it's the same thing that's developing again. People forget, no taxation without representation. Well, we have taxation, and we're not represented by anybody anymore. So it is fascinating to see, but it is incredible how I think we're going to end is just the way it always has.
Well, the thing that I've had difficulty here, and I've had lots of meetings with lots of people, and there is an element of people here that kind of get the joke. But for the most part, frankly, the people that get the joke are and don't kind of go along with the groupthink are not only not rewarded within the system, they tend to be punished, and the system tends to weed out people that do much in the way of critical thinking. So people get more received wisdom, talking points, and then kind of believe what it is, the talking points that they were handed to sort of go with. So the idea that you are on the leading edge of something that will, in a sort of a hockey stick fashion, get out of control, where you get into which any kind of compound interest equation looks like when you graph it out. It ultimately turns into that hockey stick, and it's like Ernest Hemingway wrote in, I think it was The Sun Also Rises. He asked one of his characters, said, "Well, how did you go broke?" And he says, "Well, two ways. Slowly at first, then all of a sudden." and I think that's what's happening. We're in the slowly phase, and we're on this trajectory that unless radically altered and relatively soon, and in ways that just seem to be, to me, to be unforeseeable right now, then we're going to get from the growing broke phase to the growing broke slowly phase, rather, to the going broke all of a sudden phase. And people, the same people here who kind of scoff at this stuff now will say, how did this happen? How did this happen? How do things get so bad so quickly? And of course, Martin Armstrong would say, well, it's the miracle of compound interest. There's nothing mysterious or miraculous at all. You just chose to be willfully blind. And
that's what a phase transition is. If you look at markets, because it doesn't really matter if you're talking about gold, stock market, or whatever. You're looking at a chart that is human emotions. And so they always end up, you have this slow grinding pace, and then all of a sudden there's an explosive move. And you take gold, for example, 1980. We went from $100 to about $450 or so by early December 1979. Between there and January 21st, 1980, gold goes to $875. So it's that phase transition. It's that doubling of effect, and it's such a short period of time that most of the people that will say, "Oh, come on, how could the stock market double?" Because you don't understand how things move. When it doubles, and it doesn't look like we have that much time. You don't need much time. 13 months is plenty of time. And it doesn't matter what the market is, if it's the debt, if it's anything, the shortest amount of time is what produces the biggest change. And I put out that chart on the collapse of the Roman Empire. And when I wanted to see what it looked like. And when I put it together, I was stunned that you basically fell effectively 90% in 8.6 years. It wasn't a slow landing.
100 times pi.
It is. It just goes very, very rapidly. Now that's the Roman Empire. Yes, okay, fine. Lasted for 1,000 years. That collapses in 8.6 years. That's it. So these things are not like a 747 coming in for a nice slow landing. They're abrupt, and that's what happens. And if it's to the upside or to the downside, it's basic physics.
Well, I think we had a manifestation of some of those basic physics or early stage manifestations, those basic physics in the electoral arena last night. And if your instincts are correct, I think we can sort of expect to see a lot more electoral surprises in ways that people maybe can't even fathom right now.
Yeah, I think, honestly, by the time we get to 2016, you're seeing this percolate now. And I think by the time we get to 2016, the mistake the Republicans are doing, particularly like Bonner, is trying to abolish this trend. He's only basically going to kill the Republican Party itself, and that's where this third party is rising out. So, effectively, the people want, economic conservatism. They want stuff back. My own health care, I now got, the classic letter saying that it's, I will be terminated September 10th. And so, okay, fine. So if to replace it, I go from $511 to $1,200. But hey, I got maternity leave now. So
and dental sealant.
Yeah, and so I guess I can go out and start a new family again.
And have sealed teeth while you do it. So.
But then you go online to say, all right, fine, what is this Obamacare? Oh, sorry, we're closed for the year. So, I've never seen such a total mess. And I've been getting lots of emails. Everybody's health care is going up 2 to 3 times.
Yeah, we're in our office here in Washington. We've gotten a lot of it's so many anecdotes that together you can really see a pattern, and it's really jarring the levels of increase that people are facing, and a lot of these folks are like you can imagine. You're a working family, and you don't have an extra $500 a month.
No, the guy in the office next to me, he's got a family of 4. His went up from $600 to $1,800.
And you go. Well, where does that? If
I know.
If you can, in some people, it might be highway robbery. Some people can pay the highway robbery, but they may not like it, but they can pay it. But there are others who go, I just don't have it. I can't get it.
Yeah, I know. It's such a huge increase in such a short amount of time, and then at the same time, then Obama's got his poison pill stuck in there, the Cadillac tax, and that comes in 2016.
Well, there's much more of this is still to be implemented, and it's because he, I think, in my opinion, illegally just decided he wasn't going to implement parts of the law. But if we'd be collapsing, really collapsing right now if the employer mandate was on and they were really enforcing all the aspects that they're already supposed to be enforcing. But it is what it is, so we'll have to see. But thank you again for having me back here today and to talk about this electoral development from last night. And I imagine we'll see more as this goes on, and I'd be happy to chat more as these things.
Yeah, because I think it's fascinating that people don't really understand that this is like an internal war going on, and it's not business as usual. This is the third party starting to, flex its muscles. So. Thank you for joining us. I think that will give people at least a lot more better insight into what's really happening.
Great. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.